Farm Week and Partners Magazine editor Chris Anderson connects rural routes for you. Chris shares her 4 decades of riding expertise by making sure each edition delivers the best information. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I was raised on a farm in Champaign County growing corn, soybeans, popcorn, pumpkins, and poultry. My top priority is to inform, educate, and even entertain Farm Bureau members.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
It's where your home is built, your landscape is planted, and your children play. Land is all around us, so Illinois farmers have dedicated years to learning how to best care for it. Today, we're bridging modern knowledge with resources from Mother Nature to promote natural soil activity and choosing crops that enhance soil health. To learn more about conservation efforts, visit ilfarmersconserve.com. Preserving our water, protecting our land, providing our food.
This message brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau.
You're listening to RFD Town and Country Partners, connecting you with the food you eat, the Illinois farmers who grow it, and the food-related events, destinations, and lifestyles that make our state great.
Hey, good day to you. Welcome to Town and Country Partners here on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Rita Frazier. We're on the phone line with Ken Johnson, Horticulture Extension Educator for Calhoun, Cass, Morgan, and Scott. How are you, Ken?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. For our Friday Extension Spotlight, I think over the last couple of weeks we've kind of honing in on some of these topics that are so important as we come into another growing season. Today you're going to talk with us about the importance of pollinators.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit more about it. Why are pollinators so important to us and particularly to our food that we eat?
So about 75% of all plant species on Earth need some sort of animal, some sort of pollinator in order to reproduce. And about 90% of our flowering plants need to. So, without pollinators, we wouldn't have nearly the plant diversity we have. Most of our fruits and vegetables that we eat rely on some sort of pollination, either to, get the crop period, or in some cases, if we have pollinators present, we get more of the fruits. We get better yields, larger yields. Stuff like that.
And we've heard so much about pollinators in the last few years because of the decline. Tell us about that. Why has it been top news the last couple of years?
Because of the importance they play not only to our food supply, but also our natural ecosystems. Again, those plants, if they're not getting pollinated, they're not reproducing, so we're losing that biodiversity. And then there's a number of reasons why that decline is going on. There's really no one reason. It's kind of a bunch of factors all playing along with that, whether that be habitat loss or destruction, pests and diseases, moving in with honeybees and other types of bees, kind of overuse and misuse of pesticides, a lot of different things, climate change, a lot of different things are kind of playing into the decline of a lot of these populations.
So not one, but many factors are playing in to the decline. The other thing, I guess it's kind of refreshing to see all of the different segments of agriculture and food coming together to try to address the problem. So how can we support pollinators?
One of the biggest things is providing habitat for them, providing pollen and nectar resources. Our pollinators, when they're visiting these plants, they're feeding on either the nectar and or the pollen. In the case of bees, that's all they're feeding on. They're bringing that pollen back to their hives or to their brood chambers and stuff. In the case of solitary bees, and feeding that pollen to their larvae. Butterflies and stuff are feeding on the nectar. So we need, just in general, we need more of those pollen and nectar resources out in the environment to support these populations. Another pretty easy one would be kind of rethinking the use of our pesticides. Hopefully people are following IPM, Integrated Pest Management, to begin with, but if not, kind of get more onto the IPM approach to managing stuff, where we're not constantly using pesticides. There's other techniques we can use to try to manage some of our pest problems. With IPM, you're still using pesticides, but a lot of other times there are different techniques we can use to control some of this stuff.
That sounds easy, but it's a shift in how we look and deal with things, right?
Yeah, so for a long time it's kind of been, pesticides are kind of the main way of controlling a lot of pest problems. And in some cases that using a pesticide is going to be the best way to manage a particular problem. But in a lot of cases, especially in more homeowner-type situations, there are other things you can do before using pesticides and stuff.
So, you kind of mentioned what we can plant. So as everyone gets real excited about what they're going to plant, flowers and their gardens and so on at home, can you talk a little bit more specifically about, maybe some ideas that could help the pollinators while, really improving the look of a home?
Yep. So when you're picking your flowers, ideally you want kind of a season-long blooming period there. So we do a really good job in our landscapes with getting flowers that are blooming kind of that May through August, September time range. But we'll have pollinators out now. If we have an early spring, late March, we'll have pollinators coming out. And we'll have pollinators out around into September, October. So we need to make sure we have some sort of flowering plants present from kind of that March to September, October time range to support those populations. And those early flowers and those late flowers are really important because early in the year those pollinators are trying to build up their populations. Then later in the year, those individuals that are going to be overwintering, again, are trying to build up those food stores and stuff so they can survive through the winter. Another thing when you're picking plants, your flowers and stuff, you want to try to avoid the really heavily modified flowers, double blooms, kind of those really unique, funky colors. They may look great, but a lot of times those aren't the best for pollinators. In the case of a lot of the double blooms, it's a lot more difficult for the pollinators to get in to access that nectar and that pollen. And some of those kind of unique colors and stuff, the pollinators may not recognize them. And as we breed flowers and plants more and more, we're doing that more for the looks and stuff, and we could be reducing the quality of the nectar and the pollen and stuff. So, obviously something is better than nothing, but if you have a choice, try to stay away from those really heavily modified blooms and stuff. When you're planting your garden, make sure you've got planting stuff in clumps. You don't want solitary plants here and there. Pollinators are going to kind of find that those large group massing of flowers a lot more attractive than individual plants. You kind of think if you're going grocery shopping, you'd rather go to one store to get all your groceries instead of going, 10 different places to find everything you need. Yeah,
so those potted plants, a lot of folks would plant a clump, you would say. Can you give us a couple of examples of what work well in those clumpy type patterns?
Yep, so, recently, native plants have become real popular, and a lot of our native plants do a very good job of supporting pollinator populations. But I'm as guilty as everybody. We kind of push native plants, but a lot of our ornamental bedding plants do just as good of a job of supporting pollinators, so you don't need to necessarily, don't kind of completely ignore those ornamental plants. Zinnias, cosmos, sunflowers, a lot of our culinary herbs, if you let those go to bloom, are going to be very attractive to pollinators as well.
I love those because I've been having, kind of a lot of luck with things like basil and those types of herbs. So if you let those go to bloom, they're good too.
Yep. So, a lot of times we kind of want to try to avoid them going to bloom because that does kind of reduce some of the quality. But if you've got, several plants, let one or two of them go to bloom.
Got it.
That's going to be supporting some of the pollinators.
Oh, good stuff. Okay, so 2 minutes remain, Ken Johnson. Give us a summary, our take-home for supporting pollinators in 2019.
So if you want to be supporting pollinators, creating that habitat, making sure you're having that long season of blooms present, do more of a massing than individual plants. Another thing I didn't mention is that if you're doing a pollinator garden, you're going to need to accept some plant damage. You're going to have caterpillars feeding on plants, and those caterpillars are eventually going to become butterflies and moths. So if you want pollinators around, you're going to have to be willing to deal with some plant damage. And providing habitat is also going to be important. A lot of our bees are going to be nesting in the ground, so don't mulch everything. Leave some bare ground. Leave some kind of shrubs, kind of piles of sticks and stuff around. Again, different pollinators will use that as not only a habitat but also overwintering sites as well.
There are 2 meetings coming up on the 22nd and 23rd in Carrollton and Jacksonville. If folks want to learn more, they could attend those meetings.
They can do that, yes.
Any more details on that?
You can, if you want to interested in going to those, you can register at our extension website, web.extension.illinois.edu/ccgms, or they can call 217-243-7424.
So, again, attracting pollinators to your garden, a meeting in Carrollton on the 22nd, which happens to be Earth Day, and Jacksonville on the 23rd of April. And as Ken mentioned there, you can contact your local extension office or go to that website for more details. Ken, anything else that you want to leave us with today?
There is a new kind of iPollinate program going on with the University of Illinois, kind of looking at pollinator populations and stuff. That's a new citizen science project that's starting this year. The website for that is pollinate.illinois.edu if you want to get involved in some citizen science work with pollinators.
Appreciate it. Hey, Ken, have a great weekend. Ken Johnson, Calhoun Cass, Morgan Scott County Extension, horticulture educator. Coming your way, a wonderful feature, the IHSA segment with our very own Jim Taylor, and a peek outdoors with Jim Crowley, all coming your way on this edition of Town and Country Partners.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Daniel Grant connects rural routes for you. With more than 2 decades of reporting under his belt, Dan is the go-to source for farmers when it comes to commodities. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a grain and livestock farm near Roseville in Warren County. What I love about my job is working with people, traveling across Illinois, and visiting farms along the way.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
As you prepare for planting season, remember your neighbors. Whether you're an applicator, grower, or beekeeper, use FieldWatch to register your farm and monitor for sensitive sites around you. FieldWatch is a free, easy-to-use online mapping tool. Consulting FieldWatch is now a requirement for the over-the-top use dicamba products. Communicating with your neighbors will help you protect your farm and the environment. Don't wait. Go online to fieldwatch.com. Growing agriculture, we grow best together.
Welcome to Jim Crowley Outdoors here on the RFD Radio Network, hooking you up with the information you won't have to hunt for. Sometimes people will wonder, well, what happens after a cold front, and what should your approach be? Here's one of the easiest ways I can look at it. Think about this. Before or during a front is when the fish's activity level tends to be the highest. I always tell people a lot of times you can see that when a front is approaching of some type, you see more activity around you, not just the fishing, maybe more birds flying, maybe more ducks flying by you. Maybe you'll see deer or anything. Things are up, moving around. Okay, and that happens a lot before a front. And however way God designed the animals, before a front or during one, their activity level, their feeding level peaks. Okay, and then after a front goes through and after it's passed, the feeding level can dissipate. In other words, maybe you'll see cows laying down in the field, that the birds aren't flying as much. There's always keys out there to tell you when the activity levels are, not just simply by catching fish. So at a cold front, let's just take, for example, say I'm fishing a backwater area, say I'm fishing a lake in southern Illinois, for example, and I go into a cove. All right, and the day before, I'm catching a couple nice bass or even some crappies. We'll pick bass, for example, okay? So I'm catching some nice bass on maybe a half-ounce spinnerbait. All right, well, then that cold front comes through, and things seem to slow down. I'm not getting bites. Or you get that bite where you just feel the lure being what I call tagged. They just hit the back end of it, or they hit the blades. But they're not committing to the lure, and that'll happen a lot of times after a cold front. So how do you get around that? What do you do? There's a couple things you can do. First of all, if you're catching fish the day before or as the front approaches on a horizontal presentation, okay, in other words, that would be like crankbaits or spinnerbaits, you can back off and drop down to a vertical presentation, drop down to a jig or a plastic worm. All right, so now you're going over a lot of the areas where you caught fish or you had bites the day before, but now you're slowing down your approach. And a lot of times after front, fish will either drop off to deeper water or they will get really tight in cover if there's a lot of cover that's in shallow water. So you can take that approach. The other approach you can do is you can downsize your bait. So if I was catching them on a half-ounce spinnerbait that day, then I may want to drop down to a quarter-ounce. Smaller bait, smaller blades, reel the bait slower. Also, you can either, if they're nipping at the back end of the bait, another thing I do is I will cut the skirt off on a spinnerbait to the back end of the hook, or add a trailer hook. Now I'm focusing that bite more on the back part where the hook actually is or where an extra hook is. So there are ways that I can make sure that I can catch fish even on that slow day. I will never, ever believe that the fish aren't biting. However, the fish, always biting.
Jim Crowley and the Outdoors program here on the RFD Radio Network. More to come. Stay with us.
Clean water matters to all of us. For years, farmers have been calling for clean water and clear rules because we know it's possible to have both. Now is the time to make your voice heard. The proposed clean water rule announced by the Environmental Protection Agency and the Army Corps would end years of uncertainty over where federal jurisdiction begins and ends. Support the new rule. Text WATERS to 52886. That's WATERS to 52886. And contact your local county farm bureau for more information.
RFD Radio Network's DeLoss Yankee connects rural routes for you. DeLoss delivers essential farm and food-related news to our listeners. His witty voice has been heard on the air for more than 2 decades. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
Growing up on a farm prepared me for my career. I try to know a little about a lot of things and let the people I interview be the experts. I've always wanted to be on the radio. I'm just happy to do what I enjoy.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Jim Taylor back on the RFD Radio Network. Time now for our weekly IHSA segment on Town and Country Partners. We venture a little bit off the IHSA path today, but it's a perfect segue. Last week, we talked a little bit about the IHSA Bass Fishing State Tournament Series. Now, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, they're involved in a neat event that's taking place this weekend. It's the National Archery in the Schools program, NASP, Illinois State Tournament. We have 1,000 archers throughout the state and 36 schools. Ed Cross, this is a pretty neat event with a lot of kids from all over the state of Illinois.
Yeah, and it continues to grow here in the state and nationwide. What may be surprising to some, because everybody thinks about, kids in the rural area growing up archery hunting and things like that. You think it's going to be a natural fit for them, but you'd be surprised to see how many participants we have from inner city areas. We've got a pretty good presence up in the Chicago area, as well as in the Champaign-Urbana area as well.
Well, and, I mentioned the IHSA State Tournament Series in bass fishing, and as a guy that represents the IDNR, I know you have to be pretty excited when you see organizations really, put some time and emphasis in the outdoors, and I know that has to hit close to home for you.
We talk about our R3 initiatives, which is recruit, retain, and reactivate. Obviously, with kids these age, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to recruit them into everything that we do with the outdoors, whether that means becoming a part of your local high school bass fishing team, or in this case, with schools that have archery teams. And we're starting to see a lot of schools who are even adopting some trap shooting teams. We're starting to see a lot of kids becoming more and more interested in at that level. For us, that's huge because A, we're getting them interested in it and we're getting them involved in it. But B, we're hopefully creating a lifetime member, somebody who's going to want to do this for the rest of their life. And the goal is to hopefully, when they join, maybe they'll get somebody else to join with them as well.
This taking place this Friday and Saturday at the Orr Building on the Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield. And in terms of this, this competition, this National Archery in the Schools program, again, it's referred to as NASP is the acronym, the Illinois State Tournament. Illinois, the one thing that's pretty neat about this is they appear to be that they were kind of on the ground floor of putting something like this on. That's pretty neat, too.
Yeah, when you go back to 2002, Kentucky started it, and then Illinois was one of the other first states to kind of join in on this program. And you think about just how much things have changed in almost 20 years. We're starting to see a lot more kids being involved with this. I mean, it started out relatively small, and then it's just kind of grown to what it is now. And if you look across the country and see the number of kids participate in it, it's really remarkable to see how popular it really is. And the hope is that it'll continue to grow and continue to be, a different avenue for kids. Some kids, they want to participate in something at school, but, they may feel like they're not athletic enough to be on a baseball or football team, something like that. Or, they may feel like that scholastic ball is not their thing. But, some of these kids, they'll pick up that first, recurve bow and arrow in PE class, and it kind of triggers something in them. They kind of get interested in it. And so when that happens, and we have somebody at a school who wants to start up a program and be part of the NASP program that we have here in the state, for us it's great because we're teaching kids about hunter safety and archery safety and how to be a responsible archer, but B, we're also getting them involved in becoming a teammate. And there's been several studies shown that kids who participate in team sports and who are part of a team, they become much more successful in life, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, 36 teams, 36 schools have archery teams participating in this event here in 2019. So maybe there are some people out there listening that say, well, this is something maybe would be perfect for our school to be represented in this National Archery in the Schools program, or NASP. How do they go about doing that?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. You can obviously look on our website at dnr.illinois.gov and look at that way. You can visit the NASP website. They have a way to contact folks there. Or you can contact our NASP coordinator for our agency, Joe Robinson, at area code 217-785-8060. This is one where, it doesn't really cost the school a whole lot of money this day and age. I know school dollars are tight, so they try to be as responsible about how they spend money here and there as they can. The great thing about this program is for a lot of the stuff that a school needs for this, a simple fundraiser will take care of everything you need. So there's some great work that can be done, and Joe can certainly help get a school in the right direction.
Well, I know it's neat when we talk about partnerships and relationships, and I know the DNR, they partner with the IHSA on the state bass fishing, with Carlisle Lake being the host site of the state bass fishing tournament. Now, you get some help, I think, with this. I think it's pretty neat. One of the partners is the Illinois Archery Association, providing some volunteer support. Those relationships, I know, got to be pretty important.
Yeah, and for us, it creates, it creates that teaching point, and you're having folks that this is their passion. They're trying to pass that passion on to these kids. So with these students who come in, they're having fun doing this. They're getting a great mentorship out of these members who are there volunteering.
Ed Cross with IDNR, state champions crowned in archery this weekend in Springfield. I'm Jim Taylor on the RFD Radio Network.
Thank you for joining us for RFD Town & Country Partners. Get out and enjoy Illinois.